Have you ever wondered why at some points throughout the day, randomly, you have the urge to go and eat chocolate, crisps, have chips, have a pizza, or have some other random food? In this video, I break it down for you. From sneaky marketing tactics to bliss point engineering, I share everything that I've learned after 7 years of obsessing on this very topic. Since the age of 10, I was addicted to food. In 2018, I was 125 kilos, and since then I've lost 50. And so this obsession has allowed me to get an understanding of the topic and can help you unlearn some of the habits that you currently have around food. So let's get into it. All right, so number one, what we need to understand is that we are Pavlovian. What you need to understand about being Pavlovian is that there was a dog and there was a man called Pavlov. And Pavlov would feed the dog at 12 p.m. So 12 p.m. would be lunchtime and the dog would salivate. And so this is an unconditioned response. I'm going to call it "you are." And what Pavlov said was that he wanted to test something. And so at a random time, maybe 3 p.m., he rang a bell and the dog, he didn't salivate. But then what happened, Pavlov started to ring the bell at lunchtime. And obviously the dog, in response to the lunch, would salivate. And then he rang the bell at 3 p.m. and 12 p.m. without any lunch. And guess what happened? The dog salivated. And this has become a conditioned response. And so what you need to understand is that we are just a walking, talking Pavlov's dog. Throughout our life, we have just built up associations between stimuli and response. And one of the ways that companies do this is through marketing. Advertisers and companies are very clever. They understand our psychology and they understand that they can condition a response within us. And so what you need to understand about adverts in general is that they, one, grab attention. And I'm going to talk you through an example of how they do this. But this is basically the framework that they use in order to create the association between the things that you desire and their food. So they grab your attention. After grabbing your attention, they create emotional tension. And then what they do is they position product. And then they basically just repeat this process over and over again. I'm going to speak about repetition in a minute. So an example of this is the Cadbury's advert. 13 years ago, there was a gorilla and he was playing the drums in this Cadbury's advert. And so the advert started with this gorilla playing the drums, and obviously a gorilla playing the drums is going to grab your attention. And so that's phase one. Then in phase two, what would happen is they would have a zoom in of this gorilla. So they wouldn't show the whole gorilla. The music would be a little bit slower and it would be this gorilla just playing the drums slowly. Through the music, they're creating this emotional tension as if you're waiting for something to happen. And then eventually the music would drop, the gorilla would just have his break and it would zoom out and it would just be this massive ordeal. And then after that moment, after the emotional tension has been built and you have this sense of surprise and this joy within you, they show the Cadbury's logo. So they don't even show the chocolate and they just say a glass half full of joy or 1.5 full of joy or something like that. And so what they've done there is by grabbing your attention and activating the limbic brain. So the limbic brain is the oldest part of your brain. It's the part of your brain where it is looking for threats. It's looking for things unexpected and your analytical brain shuts off. When this happens, and they create this emotional tension, you get hooked in. And then when they position the product right at the end, just like Pavlov was conditioned into pairing the bell with salivation, you get conditioned into thinking that the product, in this case Cadbury's, will give you these feelings of joy, surprise, and excitement. And so then the next time that you want this product, and I'm going to explain repetition in a minute, but the next time that you want this feeling, you then turn to Cadbury's. And so if you're feeling like you want some joy in your life and you're walking around the supermarket and you see a Cadbury's bar, because you have this unconscious association, you then grab it and buy it. And this is how marketing and advertising works. What happens with repetition, the constant exposure to this advert, means that the neural wiring in your brain that has this paired association gets strengthened over time. Imagine if you're playing the piano and you're hitting the same keys together all the time, and you're playing this piece. Maybe it's Mozart's C major or some shit. I don't even know if that's a piece, to be honest. But maybe it's Mozart's C major. Now at the beginning, you're gonna have to really think about that. So you're gonna be thinking about the keys. You're gonna have to be really conscious about playing these keys. After a period of time, you're gonna be able to play that piece without thinking about it. It's gonna be in your subconscious. And that is exactly how marketing works. Through repeated exposure of grabbing your attention, creating the emotional tension and positioning the product, what happens is that the association between chocolate and emotions of comfort, joy, surprise, maybe even sex, because that's what some companies use, Galaxy, becomes ingrained. And so next time you want these feelings, you turn to that. And that's why you have the urges. And so now, because we have this understanding, we can actually formulate a method to break the association and also break the response. And so if you think about this relationship between consumption and association, you have a few different things that happen. So at the top of the funnel, you have association that's created. And this is at the advert level. So you see the advert, and what happens is you create the association, just like Pavlov's dog, between salivation and the bell, or the bell and salivation. You create the association between some emotion that you want to feel, surprise, joy, comfort, sex, and the product. So that's right at the top. But then you have the stimulus. So in your day-to-day life, you will be walking around and you'll be maybe doing your day, and then something happens in your day that makes you feel stressed, frustrated, lonely, all of these negative emotions, and your desire for the emotions that you've associated with chocolate arise. So you might want to feel more peaceful, or you might want to feel more comfort, or you might want to feel excited, or you might want to feel surprised. And so you have this stimulus that occurs. And then what happens is that you respond. And that is what is the consumption. Because you desire this emotion, you then respond with chocolate and consuming it, or any other food that you have associated in your head. And so when it comes to stopping eating junk food, it's not just about having discipline, but it's actually about breaking the associations that we have, having the stimulus, but not responding to it. And this is how meditation can help you. So I've meditated for 5 years now, relatively consistently, and it's probably been the most powerful habit in changing how I feel on a day-to-day basis and being able to change my habits. Because when you grow up, firstly, you start with a blank pair of glasses. Got these glasses on now, and when we're younger and we're looking through these pair of glasses, they're relatively clear, right? We can see very clearly, we don't have any associations, we just take things as they are. But then as we see these adverts, and the thing is we're constantly exposed to adverts, especially now with social media, with TV, with all of these different things, we create these associations, right? So we see McDonald's and we think fun, or we think family, or we think comfort, or we see KFC and we think actually maybe healthy because they say original recipe chicken and they say these words. Or we think chocolate and we think surprise and we think delight and we think joy. And as we grow up and we create these associations and we look at the marketing, we actually get ingrained into thinking this way. And what happens when you meditate? It's like cleaning the glasses. It's like taking all these lenses out, because you can see the world more clearly. Because you start to meditate and you start to notice all the different impulses you have and when they're arising. And so you have a desire for chocolate at a random point in the day. An example for me was at 4 p.m. when I was bored at working from home, I would get the desire to go and have some chocolate in my kitchen. Before I started meditating, I didn't even know this was happening. I just thought I was having the desire for chocolate. But through meditating, because you're sitting in the present moment for an extended period of time, being aware of your consciousness, you start to notice that thoughts arise as objects of consciousness, sounds arise as objects of consciousness, impulses arise as objects of consciousness. And so later on in the day, because you've trained yourself to become aware and take notice, you start to notice that when you feel a certain way, you have the impulse for a certain food. And as a result of that, you can then make the change and you can respond differently. So that's the first way that meditation helps. So we've talked about how it can help the association level, but it also can help the stimulus level. So what happens when you meditate is that it shrinks the amygdala. And what we know about the amygdala is that it's highly linked to our emotional responses. So what happens when something stressful happens is that, and they've done brain scans on people going through fMRI scanners, which is a functional MRI scanner, which basically is this massive machine that you can get put through, and you can run different experiments on people to see how their brain is activated. And so one of the things that they do is maybe show negative images or give random different stimuli that induce emotional responses in people. And what they see is that people that meditate have a smaller amygdala than people that don't. And so they have less emotional responses, specifically stressful responses, than normal people. And so literally by practicing meditation, you're going to shrink your amygdala and you're going to be less stressed as a result of that. And so when something happens later on in the day, maybe you get given something by your boss, maybe you have to go and fix your car, which is also stress. Maybe you have to go out for dinner with your friends and you're thinking about, I don't know, some random thing about what you need to wear, and your mind starts going all over the shop. Because you've been meditating, because your amygdala is literally shrunk, because your psychology is just your biology, you will feel less of a negative emotion as a result of that. And the stimulus goes down. And so at this point, you've been meditating regularly, right? And by the way, if you want help with meditating every single day and different techniques to do it, then click the link in the description, book a call with me, and we'll sort you out so you can basically rewire your eating habits, get in the shape of your life, and become the best version of yourself. But if you have less stimuli because of the meditation, and you have less associations but also because of the meditations to the products, these foods, and the emotions that you desire, then obviously you're not going to consume as much because you're just working down the funnel. But then the thing is with this meditation practice, there's another thing that is so powerful, is that you respond less as well. Because what happens when you meditate, you're breathing, okay? So I'm going to draw this breathing here. So you're having one breath here, another breath here, another breath here, another breath here. Another breath here, another breath here, another breath here. But at some point you're going to have a thought, maybe you're going to have a feeling, you're going to have this distraction. You might even jump from thought to thought to thought. And what you realize when you start to meditate is that all of these things are just happening in this thing that we call consciousness. And the sensations of your body are exactly the same as the emotions that arise, and are exactly the same as the thoughts that arise in your head. And when this happens, it is so powerful because later on in the day, even if you do have the stimulus, so the stressful thing happens, you still feel the emotions. You have the clarity and the understanding of your emotions so that you don't feel the need to respond with the chocolate, even if you have the association to it. You can accept and acknowledge that the desire to eat chocolate is there and not act upon it because you've been meditating. And this is the power of meditation. And if there is one habit that you can build in your life that will just help you not only to rewire your eating habits, but just anything, is this one. And this is what I like to call leverage. And what leverage is literally you get a lot out for what you put in. And in business, it's talked about a lot. But even with our daily habits, this can be a powerful thing. What are the habits that you can build where you put a little bit in and you get a lot out of it? And even one daily 3-minute meditation where you just sit down, close your eyes, focus on your breath, going in through your nose and going out through your mouth, can have a significant impact on your impulse control. And as a result of that, you're going to eat less, you're going to do things more consciously, more intentionally, and you're going to live a more happy life as a result of it. Now we're going to talk about food engineering. This is super interesting, so stick around. So in your brain, there's a chemical called dopamine. And what you need to understand is that dopamine basically controls your motivation. When you do an activity and it releases dopamine in your brain, it is a signal to your brain that you should do more of this activity. As a hunter-gatherer, this was super useful. So a hunter-gatherer, let's call him Tom, he would be going around his day and maybe he had to go and hunt. And he would have to be looking for wild boar to hunt for dinner for the tribe. Now throughout the day, he would be running around and he would get a little bit tired. And what would happen is dopamine would slowly release in his brain, and that would keep him motivated to keep looking for the boar, because otherwise he would just quit. And the thing is with this chemical, it is still activated today in this day and age. And a good example of this is when you go cleaning for your room. At the beginning, you're not that motivated, right? You're just walking around and you're not really that motivated to clean. And then as you start cleaning, as you do more of this cleaning, something magical happens, right? Something magical happens is that you actually get into it. And you, 5 minutes in, you're like, wow, I just want to clean forever. And then 10 minutes in, you're like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm on a roll now. Maybe put some music on, you're really into it. And by the end, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought about it so much. And this is literally the chemical of dopamine at work. And it's incredibly powerful. However, what you need to understand is that in food engineering, there's a phenomenon called bliss point engineering. And I'm going to explain exactly how this works in a minute. But basically, it just hijacks your dopamine. And it gives you these massive peaks in dopamine. And so if you think about when you eat chocolate, crisps, fast food, McDonald's for sure, you get this massive peak in dopamine. And it's the same way that social media does. And social media, when you go onto it, they've built it in such a way that basically hijacks this exact same chemical to give you this intense sense of reward so that you keep coming back. And that's what fast food companies do as well with bliss point engineering. So they have figured out the exact amount of salt, sugar, and fat in a specific food and specific textures that when you eat them, you feel an intense feeling of reward. It gives you this massive spike in dopamine. And so what happens is we, like I said with the advert, is that we have some sort of stimulus. I'm going to call it Q in this case. And this could be boredom. And I'm going to explain a really fun example of how boredom eating impacted me later on in this video. But we have stress, we have loneliness, we even have hunger to an extent. We have environmental ones. So like literally walking. I used to walk into my kitchen and just have these fucking cues to eat, these triggers to eat, just because I've been so used to eating as soon as I go into the kitchen. So we have all these cues, okay? And what would happen is that we have a craving. And this craving would be for pizza, chips, chocolate, sweets. And the reason for this is because whenever we've eaten these food, is that we get a peak in dopamine. So we have that craving because we know in our brains that when we eat these foods, we're going to get the feel-good feeling that we want to feel because we're feeling all of these negative emotions, okay? And so we respond by eating the food, and then we get the reward of dopamine. And then that loop goes on and on because we have this stressful feeling. So something that I used to do, for example, was every single time after a work call at home, I would go to the kitchen and eat because the work call would be stressful. And as I did it more and more, just like I was saying about the piano example, as I played these keys over and over again, this repetitiveness or this repetition would strengthen those neural circuits in my brain. And this loop of cue, some emotional thing, craving, wanting the food, responding by going into the kitchen and eating the food and having the dopamine would just get strengthened and strengthened. And a good example of this is when I was a kid. So I used to go to a childminder's house when I was in primary school. My brother and I used to go to the same primary school. My dad used to work till quite late. And so I used to go to this lady, great lady, really appreciate her, called Martina's house. And I'd take my snack. And when I was there with my brother, it would be fine. Like, we'd play together, we'd just chill, like it wouldn't be boring. But then he went to secondary school, he's 4 years above me. And I used to be there and just watch TV on my own. And I'm not really that into TV, and I think I used to just get bored. And so I would have my snack, and then I knew that Martina, bless her, would have this big box of chocolates. And so I would get bored and then end up walking over to her and basically having the chocolate, because I knew the chocolate would give me this feeling of pleasure subconsciously. And so as I got bored, craved the chocolate, responded by going to the kitchen and getting the chocolate and got the reward of the dopamine, I basically just strengthened this loop of every single time that I was bored, I would have some chocolate. And yeah, at the time it might have been harmless, but I started eating more of chocolate and I started building this habit even more and more. And so in secondary school, I used to do the exact same thing. Whenever I got bored after school at a similar time, either at home or when I was at school, I'd go to the local Esso and get some chocolate and literally just binge on it. And even at break time, I'd get bored, or after lunch, I'd get bored and just have chocolate. And that response of any time that I was bored, having chocolate became so ingrained in me that, to be honest, is probably one of the reasons why I got to 125 kilos, which is so interesting because it just shows that a lot of these habits that we build up of overeating and having these associations with different foods come from our childhood and way before than we actually thought. And so when we're asking ourselves, like, why is this happening? Why do we keep doing this? Why can't we be disciplined? It's because we've had years of programming and years of conditioning when this behavior first started. So how do we actually stop this from happening? Now that we understand that the loop is just at 4 levels, we can just break it. The first thing is the cue. And the first thing that we need to understand is why going cold turkey is not going to work, especially with something like food. Let's say there's an alcoholic and he is addicted to alcohol, but one day he wakes up and he's like, look, I'm going to be disciplined, I'm not going to drink alcohol. And he's at home, but he has a drink at home. Chances are eventually he's going to end up having the drink, right? And no one would advise the alcoholic to keep the alcohol at home. They would say, okay, let's just chuck it away. Same with cigarette smokers, let's just throw it away. The problem with food, especially with addictions, especially with a lot of the food that we like to consume, is that it's not illegal, it's so easy to consume, it's so available to us, that it's very difficult to maintain discipline over a long period of time. And so we need to be way more strategic with the way that we handle rewiring our habits, because you can't stop buying food. You can't stop going shopping. It's always going to be available. And so saying that you're going to be disciplined, saying that you're just going to stop and go to cold turkey is basically just a recipe for disaster. And so there are a few things that you can do. And to be honest, there's loads of things in my arsenal. And so if you want to work with me just to get the answer to your problems, then just click the link in the description and book a call with me. But these are some of the things that I like to do. One of them is if you have the cue of maybe boredom, okay? So this is the thing that's causing you to eat more and crave the food. And you have to take notice of this, and this is where the meditation comes in. But say if you are bored, then what you need to understand is that you can just distract yourself. And so you're basically just making yourself not bored. And so becoming conscious of that you're getting bored and basically replacing that emotion with an elevated emotion is a way better approach than just going through the same loop, okay? Another example of this is if you're stressed, then writing down everything that you need to do so that you don't look to food. And the point here is that you have a cue at the moment that is causing you to eat. Maybe it's at 4 p.m. you feel this feeling of unfulfillment, you feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, you feel tired. Instead of resorting to these things, by becoming conscious of it, you can then confront it. And so something that I could have done is at 4 p.m, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to go and get food when I'm bored, I'm going to plan something fun for me to do at 4 p.m, maybe watch a podcast so that I'm distracted and that cue will go away. All right? Number 2, the second thing that you can do is replace the craving. So right now, you might have a craving for chocolate, and that's because it's going to give you this peak in dopamine. Now, instead, something that you can do is just replace it with something that is better for your goals. And so you can maybe have walk, or maybe you can have push-ups, or maybe you can have writing. And so basically just find another activity that gives you a sense of reward, that is fun, that isn't chocolate. And so you start to crave that instead. Number 3 is add friction to the response. So what friction is, and it's super powerful, I think it's one of the most underlooked productivity hacks in the world, but it's basically just like adding a barrier in the way of doing the habit that you don't want to do anymore. And so let's say you have a tub of chocolate in your kitchen and it's laid out in front of you. When you walk into the kitchen, it's just going to be there and it's going to be so easy to go and get it. And so what you can do instead, and this is something I did at home. So at home there was this cashew nuts tub where my dad basically likes to air fry cashews, and I really like cashew nuts. But as cashew nuts, you might not know, but cashew nuts are very calorific. And so you can have 8 cashews and consume 100 calories very easily. And to be honest, I could consume 80 cashews if I needed to. And what I did was I put my peanut butter tub on top of the cashews so that whenever I went to the kitchen and I was about to get the cashews out or open the tub, the peanut butter tub, then I have a big tub, I like peanut butter a lot. It's Pip and Nut. They get the peanuts from Argentina. I basically have that on there so that I have to think twice about opening the cashew tub. And so when I do that, I've added friction and it makes me less likely to respond in the way that is ingrained in my head. And then finally, replace the reward. And this is like similar to replacing the craving, but it's different because you actually still eat. And this is like planning a snack. So say if at 4 p.m, you know that you have this craving for a snack and you're like, I'm gonna eat at 4 p.m. And maybe it's just because you get hungry. Because sometimes like we get hungry because we eat at the same time every day. And say if you've been eating at 4 p.m. because you've been bored every single day, your hunger signals are gonna start aligning to that, right? And instead of just trying to go cold turkey and say, look, I'm not gonna eat, I'm gonna try and distract myself, but sometimes it's difficult to distract yourself, and sometimes it can still be easy to feel bored when you're looking at fucking podcast. Or sometimes like it's long to go for a walk and you're still gonna have that desire to eat. What you can do is actually just replace it with a food that is better suited to your goals. And so let's say at dinner time, right, you just get the craving to have fast food, like a burger and chips, a greasy burger and chips from McDonald's. Or maybe even after a night out. This is a really good way to do it, because after a night out, your inhibitions are low and you're like, I'm gonna eat anything. And what I used to do after nights out, because I had the habit of eating food after a night out, I would plan something to eat. And it could just be as simple as like a buttered slice of toast. But that's gonna be way fewer calories and way less damage to my system, literally, than going and having a massive McDonald's binge. And like, I used to have these massive McDonald's binges after a night out. Like I'd get 3 burgers, loads of fries, McFlurry, I'd get everything. And obviously that's a lot of calories. And so instead, a better approach is to just think about, okay, like, I know I'm gonna eat, okay? I'm fucking drunk. And to be fair, like, I don't drink anymore, but if you do drink, I'm gonna instead have a slice of toast with some butter, or I'm gonna keep some sort of fake away. So I'm gonna have this ready-made burger that is way healthier for me so that I don't overdo it. Or I'm gonna have a bowl of cereal or something. And what I used to do when I was bored at 4 p.m, I would have this protein yogurt bowl. And so I'd have protein, yogurt, berries, peanut butter, and then I'd put like Cocoa Pops on there. And the thing is, I talked about bliss point engineering earlier. When you have something like that, it basically emulates some of the textures that you feel when you have these foods which are ultra processed, which are designed to make you want to eat more. And so it still gives you that sense of dopamine, but it's just more aligned to your goals and what you want to achieve. And it means that you're gonna stop yourself from spiraling, because it's very easy to have 6 chocolate bars or 7 chocolate bars and that turning into a binge. But it's way less easy to have 5 slices of toast, peanut butter and banana, but the satisfaction is the same. And this is what you can do if you're struggling with eating randomly at random times in the day. If you enjoyed this video, if you thought it was helpful, then check out this video here, because YouTube thinks that you might like it. But remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.